Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions and Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And Bob, we're pre-taping the Thursday before our Monday air date.
Monday being the King holiday.
Indeed. So we won't have to be in the studio, so
yes.
the show will air.
Yes.
The actual birthday of Martin Luther King was January 15, folk, and right. I might as well just give a nice shout out to my now deceased mom, without whom I would not have been here, because she was born on the same date.
Oh, okay.
so I'm never remiss in celebrating my mom's birthday, okay. because it's always a big brouhaha. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff to try to at least analyze. There'll be a lot of more stuff breaking. One of the key stories for me is this new tiff between Nancy Pelosi and the Orange Julius in the White House,
yes.
because Nancy Pelosi, the current Speaker of the House of Representatives, decided, since it's within her purview, not to extend a platform and an invitation to the President of the United States to address a joint House of Congress and Representative to deliver a State of Union message because
of the government shutdown.
Because of the government shutdown.
And the limitations to, what is that, Homeland Security and the Secret Service.
Well, she cited those.
Yes.
Now, Homeland has pushed back and said, oh, no, we can handle it. Okay. That's what they have said. Okay. But Nancy Pelosi said, you might want to deliver your address in writing like right. they used to do in the 19th century.
and this, that's a pretty big salvo to ask the president basically not to deliver the State of the Union to the joint.
Because basically that's a big platform yes. that every president wants
sure.
to kick off his propaganda message. And guess what? They all use it to kick off their...
Sure.
Well, I say propaganda message. Most presidents would be giving you a bill of particulars for the policy agendas that they want to try to further during their next year and for the rest of their administration. And most presidents.
Yes, and it's a recap of the previous year. What the successes, obviously always glossing over what wasn't done. But it's a platform. You have a national audience. You have everybody you want to influence in the room at the same time.
But because we know this current president uses every platform for propaganda purposes, right. and the current propaganda purpose is, let's build a wall.
Yes.
Nancy Pelosi has decided, I don't think I'm going to extend that invitation.
Yes, and it doesn't bode well in terms of crossing the aisle and cooperation. But everybody's kind of saw this coming, based on not just the propaganda but the insults.
Well, I actually was very surprised when she did that. Okay. I didn't see this coming because I forgot. I knew way back when that it's actually at the invitation of the Speaker of the House.
And I frankly didn't know that.
I actually knew this, but I had totally forgot it.
Yes, but it's one of those little nits, and my degree's in history. It's one of those little things that you forget. Just like the little nit that we don't elect the president, the Electoral College does. We tend to forget that. But go ahead.
I don't forget that.
Yes.
But this I forgot.
Yes.
I forgot that the Speaker invites the president, and the Speaker doesn't have to invite the president. And so Nancy Pelosi said, in the interest of good government, we don't need a big speech about what you plan to do while the government's shut down. If you open the government, then maybe we can have this speech.
Right.
And I think the latest pushback, I just saw a headline because I didn't get a chance to dig into it because we were ready to tape. Nancy Pelosi was supposed to take a foreign trip to visit the troops and visit a couple of other foreign countries under the guise of an official trip, and it may be falling under the purview, and so the president has said, I'm going to fix it so you can't make this trip.
Right.
So
and I'm just picking that up now.
So the interesting thing is, well, what we can do is try to dig into that and see whether she has any recourse, because if he says, we're not going to let you go, Well, who knows? Maybe the House might have some other fallback plan and mechanism to make the trip happen anyway. That's something we might be able to research while we're trying to do this show and talk to you folks. But this, for me, is the latest development in what's, for me, the biggest story, which actually the equally biggest story, because we'll dig into it by digging up some of the New York Times reporting and some of the Washington Post reporting. We can't put it off the top of our head. I think Peter Baker wrote one, and I don't know who wrote the Washington Post. But key story is FBI had started an investigation on the President of the United States being a Russian agent and a Russian asset. And that's a big, big story. And they might try to push it off the front burner and try to talk it away, but that's a major story. And then the biggest story, bigger than that or as big as that, is the fact that this president actually had a deal that bipartisan people, we talked about it in the last show, had passed. And then he blew it up because the right-wing ecosphere said, no, you're caving. And so now millions of people, not 800,000, millions of people are suffering because of a government shutdown that he has caused, that he has said, oh yeah, I'm ready to shut it down. Now he's trying to blame the Democrats.
But this really adds a third item to your list, because this is a really, really big salvo that Pelosi has fired at Trump. It doesn't bode well at all for any level of cooperation between the House and the Senate and the President this term. I mean, this lays out a very bad framework for any agreement on anything. So I don't know where we're going with this in terms of mutually amenable legislation.
Actually, the interesting, you're right in that here's the third leg of this stool, because if I'd had enough time with the logistics of this stuff, I was going to actually try to call up Ocasio-Cortez's Instagram, which I think went viral. And basically, she paid a visit to the majority leader, so-called leader of the Senate, because she put her finger on exactly what we've been saying, what a lot of people have finally come around to saying. This is no longer a Trump shutdown. This is a Mitch McConnell shutdown. Yes. And Mitch McConnell is the guy that Ocasio-Cortez, let me stop maligning the young lady, representative's name, went after in her visit to the Senate, because, of course, he was hiding in wherever the Senate have their own individual hideaways. And so she Instagrammed him flat out, 800,000 plus people out of work, and where is Mitch? Right. And Mitch is in hiding, and Mitch has been in hiding since Donald Trump blew his deal up back in December. And Mitch has the wherewithal, just by bringing the bills that the Democrats have passed in the House up to a vote in the Senate, to open the government. And he is in hiding, and he is not opening the government. So I am saying to the general public and to all our viewers, and we need to put it far and wide, this is no longer a Donald Trump shutdown. This is a Mitch McConnell, what do we call it? Lack of courage? Well, fecklessness?
I think his I don't know, his tail was stepped on, and he's still squealing from that, because he's been a loyal Republican and a loyal Trump backer. Just to have Trump turn around and, like you said, blow this legislation up in his face, make him look bad. Now he's probably doesn't know where to go. Doesn't know.
Is this pride? I mean, he's sulking from pride because of the so-called president blew this crap up?
It sure doesn't look good.
But but here's my point. You've got the ability to reopen the government, and because you are miffed because this guy blew this thing up in your face, you're going to let air traffic controllers not work, TSA people not work, all kinds of federal workers not get their paycheck, people don't get loans, farmers don't get loans, people struggling to pay bills, you're going to let that happen? That's flat outright out-and-out cruelty.
Now, I don't know for a fact, but I have a feeling that his predecessor, John Boehner, would
not in the Senate. Boehner is the House.
Right. You're right. I got that wrong. But I just don't see why he would disappear and not... You know.
What you're saying is, why is he not opening the government?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Because it's on his table, and all he needs to do is bring it forward.
Bring it on to vote.
And so it's not like a mechanical thing.
Yeah.
There's no legislative block to getting things pushed ahead.
There are Republican senators who said all he has to do is go ahead and repass the things we passed already, because the House will definitely go along with it. And the other option is the bills that Pelosi has already passed in the House to reopen different sections of government, a whole handful of bills. All you got to do is bring those to a vote, and they'll pass. But he evidently doesn't want to do that. And so my question to the Republican Party and directly to Mitch McConnell, do you have no sense of shame? You're going to let people go hungry? You're going to let people lose their homes? You're going to let flight safety get to a serious risk in this country just because your pride, or the long game that I heard some pundit say, oh no, he doesn't want his members that might be up in 2020 to be thrown under the bus for having voted to open the government without getting the money for the wall, because then they're going to get voted out of office in 2020. I said, you're going to let people suffer from now to 2020 because you think you might lose some Senate seats? Something's very wrong here.
And quite frankly, I don't see an opening for a compromise from what I can see today. It might change over the weekend, but from what I can see today, I don't see that room, just based on his stubbornness. And the mayor of New York announced today, de Blasio, that the city would lose, as of March 1st, $500 million if the federal government can't get things moving. And even, for a big city of New York, that's a lot of money.
But just multiply that across the country by other businesses and other small towns who are going to hit even harder, because some of them, their sole money flow is from federal government facilities and federal government workers.
And I'm not even thinking urban. I'm thinking rural.
No, I'm talking small towns.
Farm subsidies. I mean,
places
I'm looking
out in
at
Montana, places, not big city places. Yes. I mean, all them states with little or no population, but that population is relying on federal government workers and the federal government to function. It is. See, but let me ask you something, because you said you see no room for compromise, but where would you want the compromise to come? What would look like a compromise to you? Because where I'm coming from, the compromise was made in December and passed in the Senate. What compromise are we talking about?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Coming out of the White House, he's so stubborn in the $5 billion number. I don't see any room for that at the moment, unless he simply breaks. Unless he simply relinquishes, says, okay, I'll have a 6-month moratorium on the wall. How's that? Open the government for 6 months and let's. But even that was suggested to him, something like that, and he rejected it. So that's what I said.
Somebody said, go back to the bill. We were asking for $1.6 billion that everybody agreed to, and they passed.
Right. And then
that's the bill he agreed to, that the right-wing ecosphere torpedo.
Right. And let's work on the rest of the money later. But that type of compromise just isn't flying. And of course, we're not talking about a bright man. We're talking about a really stubborn kid in the White House.
Well, you're talking about the guy who says I'm very, very, very smart?
Yes.
I'm really, really smart?
Exactly.
That guy?
Always believes that he's the smartest man in the room, but doesn't read any of the reports that are handed to him.
Yeah, right.
That's and that's basically what scares me. But you did raise the issues of the being a Russian agent, the investigation.
Let's go back to that story.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that story, because we can't fix the government shutdown, but we can actually beat the drum about the fact that I remember back in 2016 and 2017, you and I discussed, listening to the way this man talked and doing what he was doing, that one, he was a Manchurian candidate. And we didn't say, I think initially I said, he looks like he might be a Manchurian candidate. I think the second time he said, no, that's a Manchurian candidate.
Right.
And then, by 2018, we were saying that man is a Russian agent.
Yes.
We were not saying he might be or whatever. He might be a duped Russian agent,
Yes.
but he was a Russian agent. My take was he is a Russian agent, and that's what I was saying back in 2018, but we were giving him the benefit of the doubt between us that he's probably a dodo, unwitting tool of Putin.
I have no doubt that he's gullible.
Oh, yeah, we know that.
I mean, he's not bright.
But you give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he's an unwitting tool of Putin. That's where you're coming from. I hear you.
Yes, but a lot of these things seem quite witty.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you finish up on that, so I'll pick up on it.
No, when you look at the financial benefits of colluding with these different Russians, you can't say, oh, I just walked into that. No, there's profit motive all over the place, and there's a political advantage all over the place, and of course, with the elections, with the poking into the polls and everything else that's been uncovered lately, this is not unwitting stuff. This is this is stuff that he damn should have known about. So he can't hardly say that he didn't. So that's what. That bridges the gap from, I think he's a Manchurian candidate, to, oh, yeah, that's what we got here.
That's what we got here. I like that phrase. That's what we got here. Yeah. Well, the Peter Baker story was that the FBI, this New York Times reporter, FBI launched this investigation because going back to 2016, they were worried that the candidate might be an unwitting tool.
Okay.
Right? Going back there.
Okay.
And so their flags were up. By 2017, when he started saying and doing certain things, they got concerned. And by 2018, when he came out of that Helsinki meeting and said, what was it that he said?
Well, he said he had a good meeting, and he took Putin for his word, basically.
Oh, right.
And he said he didn't do it, and I believe him.
I believe him, right. Yeah. Where he threw his intelligence folks under the bus. Right. When they said, we got a problem, we better investigate. Yeah. Okay.
At that point, there's basically nothing they could have done not to investigate. I mean, that was so much grist to shove into the mill. I mean, it's just astounding that
you couldn't have put it. There was so much grist in the mill. Yeah. There was no two ways about it. Yeah. Now, you could see that. I mean, we saw that back in 2018 when we started calling him the asset, the Manchurian asset, I think is what we called him back then. And yeah, we said, no longer a Manchurian candidate, folks, he's a Manchurian asset, right? And of course, back then, I think it was James Clapper who said his Helsinki actions bordered on treason. So now, you got a former director of National Intelligence Service, I think that was Clapper's title, saying that's treasonous behavior. At least, on the surface of it, it could very well be. I'm sure the FBI said, that's close to treasonous behavior. Let's find out where this guy is and what he's doing. And so they launched that. But here's my thing. Lindsay Graham, on one of those Sunday talk shows, had the gall and the nerve to say, how dare the FBI even consider investigating the President of the United States as a potential Russian agent. Now, were it Barack Obama or were it Hillary Clinton, they would have been saying, why had the FBI not investigated this woman for, they're already screaming they need to investigate her for some uranium-1 stupid-ass crazy nonsense that already had been investigated, but they're screaming for another investigation. So my question is, these advise and consent people in the Senate who are supposed to swear the same oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, any soldier, Foreign Service official, the President of the United States, the congressional people, they swear to the Constitution. They don't swear to the President.
Exactly.
So why are these people calling out the FBI for actually trying to do their job properly?
That is their job, to defend this country, to defend its interests, to investigate where the problems seem to be, and to uncover whatever criminals.
Protect the country from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And domestic, and it doesn't, and nobody.
And the domestic could be in the White House,
Yes.
and that's exactly why they launched their investigation.
Nobody gets a pass, basically.
Not even the guy in the White House.
Yes.
So what is Lindsey Graham's problem? I mean, I already wrote him off when he flipped from his I'm a John McCain partner and I don't like this Donald Trump guy to I will suck up to Donald Trump as hard and as assiduously as I can. I wrote him off when he made that turn.
Unfortunately, he's not the only one who made such a turn.
Yeah,
I hate to say it, but there are a lot of gutless people in the Senate.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. But to get back to the matter of the possible spy in the White House.
Right.
A couple of the key things that probably been noised about that you may or may not have heard is the fact that the guy confiscated the notes from the Putin meeting from his interpreter.
Now, see,
just said, no, I want your notes.
Yeah.
And he's the only other American in this meeting with Putin. Putin's got his interpreters and maybe one or two other Russians, and they're taking notes and they know what's said in the meeting, but our interpreter, his notes get confiscated by the so-called president that's in the White House. And I'm evidently going to be going back to so-called president because I think the Russians put him in office with all their shenanigans, and I think he's an agent of the Russian government. And so I think the FBI's investigation, which, by the way, folk, the Mueller people took over when they got empowered, that investigation on whether this man is an agent of Russia was subsumed into the Bob Mueller investigation. So all the stuff that's being investigated, whether it's obstruction of justice or whatever, is still all part of, is this guy an agent? And so somebody predicted that that report's going to be some kind of bombshell, and I'm suspicioning it's going to be.
And I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to be undercut, fired, moved around, dismissed, and the president can't pardon himself, but he has a lot of executive protections that he can put into play. That
he can try.
He can try, yeah. And he has
so far,
he has a Senate that'll protect him and, and a House that'll go after him. So it's going to be really messy.
There's going to be a fight. That's for sure.
And we're let's see, Monday would be the 21st. We're practically at the halfway point of his administration, almost perfectly at the halfway point. And I really can't see this type of shenanigans going on for another 2 years without a gigantic, earth-shaking change.
Well, we talked about how many people had been indicted or pled guilty at the back end of, the year.
It was quite the list.
And and we didn't even come up with a definitive. We just named a few off the top of our heads. If we actually wrote them down and brought it here, we'd be reading like 37 names or something like that, plus the number of investigations. One of the more recent reports that came out from the not GSA, GAO, one or the other, the Buildings and Grounds, GSA probably, their Inspector General.
Okay, not the accounting office?
No, about the lease.
Okay.
The people who deal with the building.
The general services people.
Yes,
okay.
the lease for the Trump Hotel in D.C.
Oh, okay.
And their findings was that thing was a total fiasco and a debacle on the part of the people who okayed it.
Okay.
And they said point blank, this is against the Constitution's emoluments clause and possibly illegal and blah, blah. I mean, it was scathing. That Inspector General said, what? It was to the point where it said, we might have to revisit this. And so I didn't see an in-depth follow-up to it, but the top headline was, that was a bad deal, should not have been done, and we may have to revisit it. That's a summation of what that was all about.
Okay.
It would be nice to see if somebody that's now in the House, because I think that's either a House committee, House Services and Buildings and Ground and blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
And the Democrats now run the House.
Right.
Somebody may be saying to General Services, let's see if that lease needs to be abrogated.
Okay.
We'll see.
That would be a heck of a fight. I believe there was an emoluments lawsuit that got dismissed.
No, I think those things are still wending their way through the courts.
Okay.
Those are still wending their way through the courts.
Okay. But
so,
it's a tough one to get a conviction on, but it's still
I don't know about a conviction per se. If it's a violation of the Emoluments Clause, it might be impeachable offense or something.
Okay.
Once you violate, if the president violates the Emoluments Clause, then he's guilty of one of those supposed high crimes, or is it just a misdemeanor?
Okay.
It might be a misdemeanor, depending on how the House decides to rule about the violation of the Emoluments Clause.
But you said an impeachable offense, but all I can say to that is among others.
Yeah, among a whole bunch of others, yeah.
And we have about 2 minutes.
Well, there, as I said, because this monster in the White House, orange monster, keeps gobbling up all the stuff, there are still other things that we need to talk about. The Shabab attack in Kenya, which was, like we talked about the fact that we weren't paying attention to what was going on there, and that Boko Haram was still running amok, doing all kinds of crazy things. Well, Shabab decided, well, you know what, we're still here too.
Yes.
And so they launched this attack.
That rather horrific
and as of early Wednesday, the day before we taped this show, they were just being mopped up by the Kenyan armed forces or whatever. I think it was a day-and-a-half siege at this hotel, something to that effect.
It didn't take that long, but it's taken a while.
It took at least one day for them to actually move them out after they held up. So, and the mopping up things, they were still hearing gunfire back into the second day.
Yes.
So I don't know. Brexit, see, I wanted to actually start with Brexit to segue to the Manchurian Candidate Asset agent in the White House, because Brexit, the British government has just blown up, folks. Theresa May just barely survived the no confidence vote because they said, no, we ain't taking your Brexit deal, and so her hold on Parliament is gone. But that was the first test run of the Russians interfering with Western democracies, and they were very successful. They got Britain to bow out of the EU, and that's one of the big goals of Vladimir Putin.
Okay.
The next goal is NATO, and guess what? Your president, because I'm no longer calling him my president, is talking seriously about getting out of NATO. That's a story we'll talk about when we come back the next time. This has been Media Watch, folks. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait. I'm
Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on Twitter and YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And we'll catch you the next time. We only have Twitter and YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But we're going to get some more.
Yeah. We're at some point we'll probably roll this into a podcast. In 2019, we might as well do that.
I think so.
Okay.